Poppins Returns is the sequel to the original Mary Poppins film that came out in 1964. This film is a sequel that takes place 25 years after that first film. Jane and Michael Banks are all grown up. Michael, played by Ben Whishaw, now has 3 children of his own to look after, and while doing so, he has to deal with the loss of his wife. It's been a year and he still can't quite get over it. He has to deal with these repossession notices that are coming from the bank for his house. A lot of bad things are going on with his life, and it's not really the easiest. But one day, Mary Poppins comes flying in with her umbrella once again to try to help out not just the kids, but the family as a whole. In case you don't know, I am a huge fan of the original Mary Poppins film. It's one of my favorite musicals ever. It's such a well-made film, and when I heard that they were going to make a sequel to this, it was kind of expected. You know, Disney's been doing a lot of taking past properties and rebranding them for a new generation, so it kind of made sense. This is a sequel that I could kind of see happening. This wasn't one of those Disney films that I was completely dreading, though, because Rob Marshall, I think he's a really talented director. Like Into the Woods, I really like that film, and Emily Blunt seemed like a really perfect choice to be Mary Poppins. It seemed like she was really going to nail it, and it just seemed like there was a lot of good things going towards this film, so it actually became my most anticipated film for the rest of this year. After I saw Suspiria, then Mary Poppins became my most anticipated. And I'm just going to address it right now. No sequel or remake, if they ever do decide to do that, will ever compare to the original Mary Poppins film. That film is just too classic, too memorable in every sense of the word, that there's no way, no matter what film you make, that it will ever top that first film. That's just a fact. So I feel like a lot of people are going to criticize Mary Poppins Returns just based off of that fact. So I just wanted to say it right now and get it out of the way. Yes, Mary Poppins Returns is not as good as the first Mary Poppins film. So now that I've said that, how is Mary Poppins Returns on its own? Fantastic! I walked out of this film with so much musical joy. It was so good. This is why I was really pleased with Rob Marshall taking on as the director for this, because he's got such a great eye for musicals. You have Into the Woods, like I said earlier, and also Chicago. He's got great experience with this. So him helming this Mary Poppins film, it just seems natural, you know, and it really shows. There's so many great new musical sequences that I walked out of this film humming, a lot of them still stuck in my head, certain notes and melodies. This movie doesn't use any songs from the original Mary Poppins film, and if they do, it's like little musical beats that are placed in, but you can kind of barely notice them almost. When it comes to the actual songs and their lyrics, it's just all new original stuff, and that was great, because it really gives this film a whole new identity of itself. Yes, this movie does kind of borrow a lot of similar elements from the first film, but that being said, it was kind of like a Force Awakens effect for me, where they took a lot of similar things from a previous film, but they made some changes to it and rebranded it in a way that it made it its own thing. It has a whole new identity now. And I really love this film for it, because there's so many great songs in this. Like, the movie opens with Lin-Manuel Miranda singing Under the Lovely London Sky, and it was such a great way to open the film, like a little more somber, but then it kind of escalates even more to like, can you imagine that? And then A Cover Is Not the Book, Trip a Little Light Fantastic, which should be nominated for Best Original Song, by the way, at the Oscars. Whoa! Like, you're watching this movie and you're just so impressed with like every single thing that's going on, whether it's just the actors whenever they're singing or the choreography that's going on. And Trip a Little Light Fantastic is kind of the epitome of all the great singing and the great choreography. It just starts off really small and just continues to build. It's like a 7-minute song, and it's just so fantastic. I honestly, I could have watched 7 more minutes of the song. But then there's another song that they sing that I think also should deserve just a little bit of awards recognition, at least. It's called Cover Is Not the Book. And Emily Blunt and Lin-Manuel Miranda sing it with 2D animations going on around them. It's so well choreographed visually. It's perfection. It looks great, and the lyrics are just there's one moment where Lin-Manuel Miranda has to rap because he's famous for Hamilton. I was just sitting there in the theater and my eyes just kind of lit up and I smiled a lot more, and I was like really getting into the scene. I wanted him to just keep going forever. That's how great these songs are, is that you really don't want them to end. At least I didn't want any of these songs to really end, because I was getting into all of them. And there's another great song that gets you on that high note when you walk out of the theater, the last song of the movie. It's just so many great songs, and I'm just so happy that this movie took the opportunity to create new songs that are so memorable and so fun, instead of just going back to the past and being like, well, everyone loves A Spoonful of Sugar and Step in Time, so let's bring them back. Like, no, look, they have their own stuff working here. They don't need to rely on the past that much. Let's talk about Emily Blunt as Mary Poppins. I think she was perfect for this role. A little bit more stern than Julie Andrews' performance in the first film, but honestly, that didn't bother me that much. Like I said before, Emily Blunt Blunt's performance reminded me a lot of Julie Andrews, but she has her own specifics about her character in this one that she's able to take Mary Poppins and make it her own. Like, that's a common thing with this movie, is that there are certain things that will remind you of the original Mary Poppins, but they really do make it their own. Emily Blunt especially with that. Her performance is so great and her singing is so good. But Lin-Manuel Miranda, let's talk about him. He is a scene stealer. Every single time he's on screen, I wanted more of him. He's so good in this movie. And yes, he has to do the Dick Van Dyke Cockney accent that's not really accurate, but he makes it work so well, you know? Like, the way he's able to sing with it, it still sounds good, and when he's acting with it, it doesn't bother me, like how Dick Van Dyke's performance, his voice didn't bother me in that one. And it's kind of a shame that I think Lin-Manuel Miranda is gonna get a lot of overlooking for his performance in this, and that's a real huge shame because he really brought his A game to this and he was just quite fantastic. Some other people I really liked, Emily Mortimer and Ben Whishaw as the grown-up kids. I think they're all really good. Emily Mortimer and Lin-Manuel Miranda have their own kind of storyline going on, and that was a little sweet. Like, it was a nice little story beat for those two, but Ben Whishaw in particular really impressed me with this movie. He's got a scene early on in the film where he's got that kind of song where he's singing a little bit, but there's moments where he just kind of has to talk it out. I don't know if that was like specific direction from the director or if he's just like not that strong a singer. Either way, the raw emotion that he's able to put into that performance in that moment made the song work so well. It's not like a big bombastic, like, let's tap dance everywhere song or anything like that. It's just this real quiet moment with him, like just looking at these old things, and it's just such a great moment that it brought tears to my eyes. And this is only like the first 10-15 minutes of the movie. I was already digging the emotion. And then it doesn't help that later on in the film there's another scene involving him and his children that at that moment, that's when the tears started to flow, and it was at that moment where I just kind of told myself, like, yeah, I'm really into it, just let the tears drop, don't try to hold them in. And speaking of the kids, they kind of contrast the original two kids in the first movie, where those guys were a little bit more mischievous and troublesome, and in this one, they're already, like, good kids, like, they're good kids, and they've had to do a lot of, like, maturing and growing up on their own already, mainly because of their tragic loss of their mom. And that was a really good way to flip the children storyline in this one. That they're not being mischievous, they're good kids that just need a little help with their family life at the moment. I thought that really worked for this film. And all of them are good actors. Like, I was a little worried about that because I really like the two child performances in the original, and whenever you're working with kid actors, not really sure how they're gonna do, but these guys really nailed it. I think they did a really good job. Meryl Streep has a small appearance in this film, and a lot of people might say it was kind of unnecessary, that they didn't need to make a whole song for this one scene that was just going to lead to this, and I can kind of understand where people are coming from in that sense, but at the same time, the musical sequence they have was just so much fun that I was just like, screw it, you know? Like, I'm into it. And I didn't really feel like the movie was being unnecessarily dragged out. It just felt like they had another fun musical set piece to show us, and here it is, and I enjoyed it immensely. All of the acting is really good all around. If I had to have a problem with this movie, though, it is unfortunately Colin Firth's character. He is the manager of this bank now, and he's the, unfortunately, he's kind of the mustache-twiddling evil banker now, and that's something I really like about the first Mary Poppins, is that they're played up a little cartoony, but they're not evil per se. They're just kind of doing their job, and they've kind of been corrupted by this business they're in. Colin Firth, however, his storyline, they make it kind of seem like the way he's acting, maybe he's got like some personal vendetta against the banks or something, but he really doesn't. So the way he acted in this film, like just this evil guy, didn't really work for me, and I think if they just played him up to be a little bit more realistic, or if they actually made it like a personal vendetta against the banks for whatever reason, then I think it would have worked a little better. But that being said, though, that race against the clock kind of feel of you have a couple days until we repossess the house, that actually does add a lot of tension to the near end parts of the film, and I really like that about this movie too. And it also leads to a great scene that I can't really spoil. It might have been spoiled already by like marketing, but I won't spoil it here. That got me to cry again. Like, it was such a great moment. and I loved it. Other than that one flaw I mentioned, I think Mary Poppins Returns really captures that spirit that the original had, but makes it feel brand new again. This movie is a brand new version that will remind you of the first film in a couple areas, but for the most part, it has a whole new story to tell. So while certain beats might be like, well, this kind of feels familiar to this and this and this, I didn't really mind all that much because they were giving me a whole new story with these new characters and these older characters that have now since changed since we've seen them last time, and I really walked out with such joy in my heart. The musical sequences are just so well directed, so well composed. Mark Scheiman, who composed this, he is great. One of my favorite scores, musical soundtracks of the entire year. I don't know what else to say about this movie. I walked out just really loving it so much. I'm gonna give Mary Poppins Returns an A. Besides the Colin Firth storyline, I really do feel like that this is one of my favorite films of the year. This might not be a popular opinion amongst many, but I really do feel like that this film was able to take that impossible task of making something almost as good as the first Mary Poppins film, and I think they pulled it off really well. They didn't have to rely on any of the other songs to do that. They had their own new memorable songs that I really enjoyed and I've been listening to throughout my school day. I think the performances were all really good. Emily Blunt really captured that Mary Poppins performance. Lin-Manuel Miranda is a scene stealer. The set design, the cinematography, the score of this film, all the technical aspects really work. The choreo in the musical sequences, there's just so much to love from like a musical fan or just a film fan in general. So if you have any skepticisms about Mary Poppins Returns, I'd say just go check it out. If you have kids, then they'll also really like it, but you might also really enjoy it yourself because they actually do a lot of really great emotional storytelling in there as well that you might be able to connect to on a certain level. But if you've seen Mary Poppins Returns, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.